Alright, day 10 of the Vauxhall Vivaro camper van conversion build. What I'm going to do is measure out on the floor here, and I'm going to put some masking tape down to get the exact dimensions of the width of the cabinets. Cabinets are going down here, rock and roll bed's going here, but you want to know exactly how much depth we have here to build the cabinets. So I've got the dimensions of the rock and roll bed, which I'm going to mark on the floor, and then we will measure up for the cabinets. First thing we want to know is, where is this far side of the rock and roll bed going to sit? And we have to take that from the narrowest point in the van, which is this pillar. So if I put this square on the floor, and then I've got a little bit of this masking tape just at the heel of the square, which is there. So we know that from this mark we want the full width of the rock and roll bed, which was 119. So we're going to take that 119 from that mark there, like so, over to here, 119. And we'll put another piece of tape on the floor just there. Right, that is the width of our rock and roll bed. Now, we also want where it's going to sit this way when it's in the seated position, so that we make the drawers and everything in the right place, so it doesn't snag with the bed when it's in the seating position. That measurement is 105, and that would be from the back door. So I'm going to close one of the back doors and measure in me 105. If we're plumb up against the back door there, now I'm going to give that just a couple of centimeters of air, so to speak, bring it to there, and then our 105 is here. So again, we want a little piece of tape. These are just, as I say, for markers to tell us that the rock and roll bed in the seated position will come to about there. Okay, so you probably won't be able to see this, but I have transferred the widths of all of these various components onto the floor. We know where the fridge is going. We've got a cupboard here, we've got 3 drawers, we've got a locker, then we've got a tall cabinet, and at the end, far end, we've got the battery box, and the position of them is all marked on the floor right now. Right now, just to check all of this against the plan before we start doing anything, if we add these components up here, which comes to 200 centimeters, and I was saying 207 in the van, I'm going to go with the 200 because we will have a fascia, a 5.5mm ply panel on the back of this section here, and if we take the 7 off there, we'll have enough room, well, maybe 1.5mm out. That's not going to make a fantastic amount of difference. So our first strip from here to here is 2 meters. Right, so this is our first batten at 2 meters. Line that up with the side of the fridge. At this side we should just have about 5mm, 6mm. So what I'm going to do is transfer these marks for the various cupboards from the floor onto the batten. Now, just one more thing to consider before putting these together, and that is the height. Now, on the plan I've got marked at 690. That height has changed because we did put some insulation down, and we did put the 11mm subfloor down, and that's different to what was in there. I think it was 9mm to begin with. So I'm going to change this to 670. 670 sits much better in the van. I've just measured that, so that's good. So the overall finished height of this is 670. Now, to find the height of the actual upright beams or spars, we want to take the 670 and minus the depth of the worktop, which is 38, and then minus the depth of the rails, which are going on the top and bottom of here. Now they are 44 piece, so that's minus 88. So that tells us that we need to cut the uprights at 544. Okay, that's 7 of them at 544. Now, for the construction of this, this and this are going to have a router channel in them to put the dividing sections in. Obviously it'll just butt up against this side and it'll butt up against that side. So we need to take 3 of these and take a 5.5mm or 6mm channel out of the middle of them, and we need to do that similarly with the cross battens where those two things join. I'll show you what I mean. I've just set this little jig up on the side of the bench just to hold that wood as I router it. I have the router set up to hit the centre of that. Depth of about 5-6 mil, and it's a 6 mil bit which I've got in there. So that's looking good. And that's what we want with them, so we can slide the ply into it to make a really good joint. So I want 3 of those. And the only other bit of routering for right now is we want to take these channels out of the crossbars so that they will marry up with them like that, when we put them on like that sort of thing. Alrighty, and the method of construction for this framing is I've got these 70 mil screws, and what I'm going to do is line them up there. I'll drill through there and I'll put a couple of those right the way through into the frame. Just to show you the setup here, I've put a stop on the bench at the top, I've got my upright in here, and I've got my bottom batten here. Now I can line up that channel and then put some glue on there and then put the screws straight into it. And of course what we want to do is just make sure that this doesn't move at all, and make sure that everything's nice and flush, and then put my screw in. There we are. That's the first one. And I'm just going to continue this all the way along with this batten until we have everything on. Okay, so that's the main frame made. Now what we want to do is get back into the van for a bit more measuring, and we want the back batten on this, the wall batten. That is going to go really from the back doors there right up to this corner. So we want to mark the height of that, which we know is 63, and then we want to take into account this pillar, the curvature on here. There's a few things to do there, but that's my next job, make this back batten. So this first piece is going in here. We just want to line that up with where it marks. And what I'll do is I'll just put a screw through here to hold it, and then I'll get through into the metal on either side. Okay, that's the back battening all the way along, and I'll just show you what I've done to get round this. Obviously this one's secured to the wall, this one's secured to the wall. This one we've had to put a little bit of packing in there, and I had to put some packing in there just to get that nice and flush. And I've screwed that through into each of those battens, and then I've screwed it through into this pillar. So that is solid and secure. Now the best way I've found to mark out these cross battens, because it can get quite confusing quite quickly, because they will all be different lengths. So I've marked out these uprights on the main frame as A, B, C, D and E, and I've also made a little grid here so that we know which is the top and which is the bottom, because the tops and bottoms will be different lengths also. But the first thing we want to do is square that up with the wall batten, and to do that I've just put a couple of little ties on here, and we've got our line on the floor already, so if we can line that up with the floor line like so, and then we want to get a square on the floor and square that up, and once that is squared up we can put a screw through here, and that should hold it square and allow us to get accurate measurements on the inside. Okay, so with that done, that's lined up there nicely. Now we can simply mark from here to here, and this would be A bottom and this would be A top, but that is going to be different because there is a slant on this pillar, and that's going to be the same for all of them. The wheel arch one's obviously much smaller, and as the wall curves, comes in and out, they're all going to be different. So good idea to make accurate measurement and keep a good record of it first. So here I have a cutting list for those cross buttons. What I'm going to do is just cut them out, and there's 6 of them that would want routering to fit in with the cabinet dividers. So it's B, C and D that need routering, A and E are okay straight. So I'm going to cut them off, router them up, and then we'll get them on the frame. Okay, so having marked all of those, cut them, routed the ones that need routering, the next thing to do is fit them to this frame. So we're going to fit these in the same way. I'm going to drill a couple of holes through here. We're going to put that on the back, and then we're going to glue and screw into it. So let's go. Okay, now if I can show you how I'm doing this, I've got all the holes drilled. I've got these pieces marked. This tells me this is A bottom, so that one's going in there. And we want a bit of glue on that. We have a stop on the bench to stop it from jumping around. I'm simply going to put that in there, tighten up the stop, and then I'm going to use some of these 50mm screws from the front into that button. And I just want to make sure everything is nice and tight. Okay, now with all of these on, the next task here is to cut some ply panels for the 3 routed sections. This will give this a lot more strength. It's a bit rickety right now, and it's not square, but once we put the panels in, that'll square it up and give it fantastic strength actually. So what we want to do is measure for those panels now. Okay, so I've got the first panel here cut at 614, and what I'm going to do is slide it into that groove. That's it. And if we make sure that's nice and tight there, we can now check this to make sure that that's square, and it is. So this is the correct height for the ply. Alrighty, so to scribe these panels in, a few things. First thing, I have the unit positioned where it's going to actually sit, and then what I'm going to do is pull that forward a bit and slide this first panel in. Okay, we just want to make sure that that's pushed in as far as it will go, which it is. And now we need a stick to scribe it with. And what I'm going to do is, there's a section here, I'll show you. We have to take into account this button here. So we want to start the scribing from 18 in from the edge of this button, and then that will slide under there nicely. So this may be a little tricky to see, but I'm taking a line from underneath this button. I'm going to mark that on this stick, and I'm going to drill a hole there and put my pen through it. Right, I want to take a line right the way down, keeping that as square as possible against the wall. It'll be a bit of a higgledy-piggledy line, but it'll do. We're coming out for the wheel arch, and we're going down to the floor. Right, that gives us a rough cutting line. I'm going to sketch that in by hand, and then I'll whip that off and we'll see how this looks. Okay, so here's our first one cut. I'm going to line that back up at the back, push it in, and that to me is looking okay. Well, tight fit here. I've got a little bit of a gap here, but this is okay because we will have conduit coming through here. So we need some air for the conduit to get through right the way along, and that will be for the fridge and for the main electrics from the fuse box, etc. So I'm saying I'm happy with that. Fits nicely at the top, and I'm going to do the other two. Exactly the same procedure. Alrighty, so these 3 are looking good. Just want a little bit more out of there, a little bit here for the conduit, and I'll take a little bit out of here for the conduit as well. And then they will be good to go. And the thing which I want to do before gluing these side panels on is to take out some notches like this for the door catches. There's one here for the top drawer. This one is a locker, is going to be a locker. Okay, they're routed out, and I've also done the ones for the drawer section, dividers, and that's all good. Now our next thing is to glue in these panels, and then we can get started on the fridge housing. I'm just going to put some glue in this channel. There it is. I'm going to put some up this side channel and some up that side channel. So that is going in there like that. And again, we just want to make sure that's pushed right the way in and that those pieces are brought in also. Good. Do the other two, then we'll see what we've got. Alright, to start making the fridge housing, I've cut the side panels, which are 47 by 63, and we want to put a batten along the front of that. So I'm just going to drill some holes so you can screw that from the other side. And the other thing we want with this is a couple of these lugs here so that we can screw the fridge into the frame once it's in the van. Now I've measured those on the fridge and I made a mark here and a mark there, so I'm just going to again put a couple of holes in. Then we can spin this over and countersink it, glue it up, and then screw it from the other side. Now our next thing with this is we want to fit the fridge panel onto the side of this cabinet. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue down these battens, and then we can fit our panel in, which is going flush with the back of here, and that wants to be squared up along that line. Okay, and there it is. We have this panel on for the fridge, we have all of the other panels on. I'm going to leave this end one because that's going to go tall. That is the tall cupboard panel. I would rather make that in one, so I'll leave that for now. Next thing to do is to consider this panel, which is one side of the battery box. Now the battery box has got quite a bit of stuff in it, and it's going to have many of these lugs on to hold all of that material in place. So I'm going to leave that for another day. It's quite a complex job, but for now, for day 10, that is it. I think we've done very well today. We've got all of this structure pretty much ready. That'll come together really quickly. We've just got the battery box to make, and then we can secure all this into the van. So if you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see how this van eventually turns out, do consider subscribing to the channel. Other than that, I thank you very much for watching.